I'm Clever Ghoul, but you can call me Nikki. Welcome back to the channel. So earlier this week, I was wandering around a HomeGoods. They have a lot of interesting things going on right now, including this giant skull. I had to take a picture with it. Look at this. Anyway, I saw this item. It's a book with some potion bottles on it and it lights up. I've been wanting to make potion bottles for a while, but immediately when I saw this, that idea was reignited in my brain. And I knew that I could make it more realistic, more creepy, more witchy than what was going on at HomeGoods. So that's what we're going to be doing today. This is a really easy craft. We're basically going to be coloring glass, which I have done on the channel before in this video where I made some colorful candlesticks. But since I want more of a frosted, old, dusty, creepy sort of look, I'm going to be using just regular white Elmer's school glue. The white glue for some reason dries down frosted, so if you want to do a frosted look, the white school glue is the way to go. And if you want to do more of a clear glass look, I would recommend checking that video out just for some additional tips. Anyway, that's enough about glue. Let's get into it. For materials, you'll need the following: Elmer's washable school glue, a variety of bottles. I got mine at Michael's because I like that they have the little cork in them, but I would also say it's worth checking out your local thrift store, or if you have any bottles on hand that you need to get rid of, this is a great project for that. Food coloring, I used both the neon and standard color packs. Medium grit sandpaper. Bottle labels, I found these at Michael's and they're specifically kind of Halloween based, but there are different options out there for you to choose from. Any sort of spooky charms, beads, odds and ends, bits and bobs that you might have that you want to glue to your bottles. Also, some velvet ribbon or some twine is a good option to have here. Hot glue and warm white LED balloon lights that you can find at Amazon. I have them linked below. Optional items include acrylic paint in a variety of browns and grays, 18 gauge wire or eye pins. I use the latter, wire cutters, and pliers. First, since these bottles are new, I wanted to get them looking a little more old and scratched up, so I took out some sandpaper and started sanding along the tops and bottoms and sides of the bottle. Once they were all sanded, I wiped them down with a damp paper towel and then moved on to coloring the glass. To make the glue colorful, I first poured some of the white glue into a plastic cup, then added in the food coloring to make my desired color. If you're not super familiar with color theory or you're not comfortable with mixing colors, a good tip here is to go online and look up how to make whatever color you want in frosting. I know that sounds weird, but there will be charts online that show you all these different food coloring options of how to make a maroon or an olive green or something else. And it's just a really good way to get started if you're feeling a little stuck and unsure of where to start. And even with all that information, you're probably going to do what I did, which is going back and forth between adding a little more glue, adding a little bit more of one dye, adding another dye, mixing it back and forth until you get the color that you want. Another tip here that I think is actually an important one to remember overall when crafting is that when you're mixing paint, or in this case dyed glue, what it looks like when it's mixing and when it's wet is going to look different than when it dries down. Paint always dries down darker than the color looks when it's wet. So if you're in doubt, go a little lighter. At the same time, one of the great things about this project is that if you don't like what you're doing, the glue itself is washable and peelable and you can just peel it right off and start over again. So really it's a very forgiving craft. When applying the dyed glue, you want to do a thin layer while also making sure that there's enough on your brush so that it glides across the glass. If the brush is too dry, it will kind of catch or stick to the glass surface, which may not be that big of a deal with the first layer, but when you're on your second or third layer, it can remove the layers underneath it. So you want to make sure you have enough on your brush that it's going on smooth, but not too much that it's leaving big gloopy streaks. So I would paint one thin layer at a time and then leave it to completely dry before doing anything else. Once completely dry, repeat the same process over again. I did add in some streaks and patches here and there to make it look a little more beat up and old, but if you're really going for a perfect smooth layer, doing one thin layer at a time here is key. I continued the same painting process for all of my bottles, doing at least 3 coats of glue per bottle. Now it's time to decorate. This is really dealer's choice. Do whatever you want, add whatever you want on, but I'm gonna walk you through my process. So first I would pick a label that would go on the bottle. I felt that the labels I had were a little too new and shiny, so I took some sandpaper and lightly rubbed it all over the label. Now I recommend doing this step before putting on the bottle, so while the sticker's still in the label book, giving it a light sanding, then peeling it off and applying it, because it'd be a real pain to sand off some of those glue layers that you just put on. Next, I would take some velvet ribbon in different widths and tie it around the neck of the bottle in different ways. I also started to add some charms to my bottles, like this moth, which I thought was, again, too shiny and new, so I pulled out some acrylic paint in deep gray, added some onto the tip of my brush, wiped off any excess, and just sponged on some paint onto that charm, basically aging it and dulling any of the shine and making it look like it belonged with the bottle. When I liked how that that looked, I added some hot glue and glued it into place. Lastly, I thought the bottles were still looking a little too fresh for my liking, so I mixed up some more of that deep gray paint with some honey brown paint, and again using the sponge brush, I wiped off any excess and lightly applied it to the bottle, adding in some age and grime to the look. Once the bottles were done, it was time to move on to the lighting. Now some of my bottles have a very skinny neck, and my concern was if I dropped a light down into them, I might not be able to get that light out. And if I'm trying to turn the lights on and off at different times of the day, how am I going to do that if I can't get the light out? As you can see below, this isn't really a problem with the wider neck bottles, but it is with these skinny necked bottles. So I had to come up with a solution. I dug through a bunch of my craft materials and I found these eye pins that are usually used for jewelry, and I realized that I could make sort of a fishing hook-like apparatus to attach these lights. Let me walk you through it. So these lights have a little hole at the top of them that is used to attach wire or string so that you can tie them into a balloon. So keeping that in mind, I pulled out an eye pin, threaded it through the hole of the light, then with some pliers, grabbed the eye part of the pin and bent it upwards, making almost a little hook. Then I lined up the remaining straight part of that pin with the cork to see how much I needed to cut off, took some wire cutters, snipped off any excess, took that straight edge of the pin and pushed it up into the cork to secure it and anchor it into the cork itself. So now when you go to turn on the light, you just pull up the cork, flip the little switch, put it back in. You're never gonna have to dig for a light this way. You're never gonna have to worry that the light fell down and it's just gonna die in there and be rattling around forever. It's just a really great solution to keep the light at the top of the bottle. It's simple to get at. And I like how it looks functionally where the light's coming down from the top. So now that that's done, it's time for the reveal. Here they are. I love that I chose to put some of the lights in the bottom here and some at the top because I really think it adds a nice variation to the color when everything's lit up together. Something I really love about these two is that they look great unlit and lit. Completely different vibe, but really fun either way, which is really exciting because I think sometimes when things are meant to be lights, they kind of look a little dull or boring during the day because again, their whole purpose is to light up and be fun. But the fact that these look cool when they're just sitting there is really exciting. And I really love that warm ambiance that these give because I have a lot of gold accents in my house, and so this just works really nicely for me. I also am really pleased with how I figured out this lighting situation where you just pull the cork out, flip a switch, put it back, and now it's on. And it just adds like a firefly sort of glow to it that I really like. And again, easy to take out and turn off. Now, if you're making this at home, I would love to know what kind of colors you would use and what kind of potions you would have in these bottles. Maybe some belladonna, maybe some hemlock. Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!